The HOA thought they could control me with a fine for hunting on my own land. What they didn't know was that I had the resources and the will to fight back harder. Instead of bowing to their rules, I bought the land their beloved hiking trails ran through. And then, I shut everything down. Saturday morning. The dew still clung to the grass, and the woods were alive with the quiet rustle of wildlife. I strapped on my boots, grabbed my rifle, and prepared for what I thought would be a peaceful day of hunting. Hunting wasn't just a hobby for me, it was tradition. My father had taken me out into these woods when I was a boy, teaching me to respect the land, track carefully, and never take more than I needed. To me, hunting was a way of staying connected to both him and the land I had worked so hard to protect. But the peace didn't last long. When I reached my front gate, something bright orange caught my eye. At first I thought it was a flyer, maybe a notice from the utility company. But when I pulled it down and read it, my blood boiled. Violation notice, illegal hunting, fine $500. It was signed by the Homeowners Association, HOA. Illegal, on my own property? I reread the paper 3 times, each time feeling more insulted. The HOA claimed I was endangering residents by discharging firearms within community limits. They had no authority over my land, but they didn't care. To them, rules were rules. Rules they wrote, rules they enforced, and rules they profited from. That evening, I stormed into the HOA meeting. The clubhouse smelled like stale coffee and overpolished wood. The board members sat in a row like self-appointed royalty. At the center was Marjorie, the HOA president, a silver-haired woman in a lavender suit who thrived on control. She smiled thinly as I dropped the violation notice on the table. "Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice sweet but sharp, "you've been fined for violating community safety regulations. Hunting is not permitted within residential boundaries." "Residential boundaries?" I snapped. "This is my land, my property. I own it outright. You don't have a say in what I do on it." She leaned back in her chair, enjoying the confrontation. "If you live here, you follow the rules. It's for everyone's safety. The decision is final." I glanced around the room at my so-called neighbors. Some avoided my eyes. Others smirked, clearly pleased that someone had finally put me in my place. My fists clenched at my sides. "You've made a mistake," I said quietly. Marjorie arched an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You think you can bully me into paying this fine, but you've picked the wrong fight. I don't bend to people like you." Her smile faltered just a little. "Then expect further action." That night, I sat in my study staring at community maps. The HOA loved parading their hiking trails as a community treasure. They boasted about the scenic routes, the nature walks, the access points. But here was their problem. Those trails weren't HOA owned. They cut straight through a large piece of private land that had been sitting on the market for months. And I had the money. The next morning, I called the realtor. By the end of the week, I signed the deed. The land was mine. 2 days later, bright red no trespassing signs went up at every trailhead. Underneath, in bold letters, I had them read, "Private property. Hunting permitted. Trespassers may be hunted down." By Monday, all hell broke loose. Hikers stormed out of the woods furious. Parents complained their children had nowhere to play. And then came Marjorie, storming up to me while I was installing a new sign, clipboard clutched in one hand like it was a weapon. "You can't do this!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the trees. "Already did," I said, not even looking up from the drill in my hand. "This community relies on these trails. You're cutting off access to everyone's property values." I turned to face her, rifle slung casually across my shoulder. "Funny. I thought the community relied on fairness, but when you fined me for hunting on my own land, you made it clear you don't respect me. So I don't respect you." Her face flushed crimson. She ranted about lawsuits, public safety, legal action, but I just smiled. Because for the first time, I had all the power. The following weeks were chaos. What had once been a sleepy, quiet community turned into a battlefield. Every morning I woke up to angry emails, letters stuffed into my mailbox, and even protest signs staked along the edge of my driveway. "Open our trails." "Stop the madman." "No nature for no one." The HOA called an emergency meeting, this time packed wall-to-wall with residents. Parents demanded their kids have access to nature. Retirees shouted about their daily walks being ruined. Marjorie, of course, stood at the front, rallying the crowd with promises to fix the situation. When I walked in, the room went dead silent. Dozens of eyes burned into me. "You!" one man shouted. "You can't just buy the trails and close them." "Yes, I can," I replied calmly, holding up the deed. "It's called ownership." Marjorie slammed her fist on the podium. "You are holding this community hostage. This isn't about your land anymore. This is about your vendetta against us." I smiled. "You're half right." The HOA tried everything. Letters from lawyers, threats of injunctions, even calls to local media. Reporters came sniffing around, but when they learned the trails were private property and I had every legal right, the story fizzled. That didn't stop the neighbors, though. They gathered at the trail entrances with protest signs. Some even tried sneaking through, but I had already installed security cameras and fencing. The first time I caught someone climbing the fence, I called the sheriff. The man was cited for trespassing. Word spread fast. Suddenly, the protests shrank. Nobody wanted a criminal record. But the HOA wasn't done. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I found Marjorie waiting at my gate. She wasn't yelling this time. She was calm, too calm. "You've made your point," she said, "but this will destroy property values. Families will leave, the community will collapse. Is that what you want?" I stared at her, unflinching. "What I want is respect, and you made it clear I wouldn't get it by playing nice." She tightened her jaw. "You'll regret this." But the only thing I regretted was not doing it sooner. The HOA finally escalated. They filed a lawsuit claiming I was acting in bad faith and damaging community interests. For months, we battled in court. Their lawyers tried painting me as a reckless man with a vendetta, but facts are facts, and the deed was ironclad. The trails were mine. In the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. Residents sat shoulder to shoulder, eager for me to lose. Marjorie, dressed sharper than ever, sat with her legal team, smirking like she had already won. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall and held up the deed. This isn't about rules. This isn't about safety. This is about power. The HOA fined me for using my own property, so I exercised my rights and bought the land they depended on. I'm not breaking the law. I'm enforcing it. The judge reviewed the documents, sighed, and delivered the verdict. "Case dismissed. Full ownership upheld." The courtroom erupted, half in outrage, half in silence. Marjorie's face turned ghostly pale. She had lost. Afterward, she cornered me outside. Her voice trembled. "You've ruined everything. Do you understand? Everything." "No," I said quietly, leaning close. "I just reminded you that some people can't be controlled." From that day forward, the trails stayed closed. The signs remained. The fences stood tall. The HOA's reputation crumbled, and Marjorie eventually stepped down. Families moved away. Property values dipped. As for me, I went back to what I loved, hunting, walking my land in peace. No HOA fines, no interference. Just me, the woods, and the silence they could never take from me again. And that's how one man turned the tables on a power-hungry HOA, by buying the very land they depended on and shutting it down for good. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's permanent. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and of course, subscribe to Hidden Compass Stories for more real, dramatic tales of justice, revenge, and unexpected twists. Until next time, stay strong, stand your ground, and never let anyone write your story for you.